They keep saying white privilege, white rage, white supremacy, and then you say, okay, let's look at this very carefully. So you're suggesting that the white male is raging and doing all this damage to people of color. So let's look at some statistics. Homicide, he's vastly overrepresented. No, he's not. He's underrepresented as a demographic. Suicide, he's vastly overrepresented. He commits suicide twice as often as Latinos or blacks per capita. How about we use people of color in a white man's war overseas, as we were heard of Vietnam, which was untrue, by the way. No, he dies at double his demographics. 75% of the deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan were white male. How about rare interracial crime? He must be preying on people of color since he's raging. No, he's more likely a victim of interracial crime. African Americans commit 6 times the racial crimes against whites as vice versa. And so you think, well, if it's white, he's committing hate crimes. No, he's vastly underrepresented as a demographic in hate crimes. The marginalized group, African Americans, are double their numbers of hate crimes than their percentages. And so when you look at and who would be the most likely victim of a hate crime are Jewish white people. It's just not even close. They're 3% of the population. I think it's about 10%, 15% of all hate crimes. When you look at anti-Asian hate crimes and you look at the perpetrator, it's not white males disproportionately, it's African American. And yet we don't talk about that. So when they keep talking about this, it's very hard to find data that would support it. It's almost a rage. And when you hear it, what's scary is this is not coming from Black Lives Matter or Antifa alone or the academic lounge. This is coming from Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley. And when you see people who are so wealthy and so privileged lecture people on with revolutionary fervor, if you look at The View and you see multimillionaire Jay Behar or Whoopi Goldberg or this Sunny Houston or whatever her name is, and they're lecturing people about their white privilege and this, and they're the most privileged people. And you think, well, what was so wrong with your lives? What was so wrong with the system? How did you become so successful? Who did it? Who created the system? Why do you hate it so much? Why are there 5 million people trying to get into this country? Why is China trying to destroy this country? What is it that you hate about what's enriching? Why is Ilhan Omar so critical of a country that took her from a god-awful Somalia, which was basically a hellhole on earth, and she never has a nice word to say about the United States? So it's, I don't know if it's performance art or what, but people are getting very tired of it. And every once in a while, I go my upstairs bookcase and I pull out letters from my namesake, Victor Hanson. And he was killed on Okinawa. He came out of a rural high school. He was 22. He went to the University of Pacific. He got a bachelor's degree, very rare for that family, Swedish family. And they put him in the 6th Marine Division, and that division had 92% casualties and was completely destroyed on Okinawa. And he is writing letters to my Swedish grandfather from Guadalcanal right before he lands into Okinawa. And he says, because he was adopted, because his mother died during his childbirth and his father was blind. So my father, who was his first cousin, they adopted him as a brother. And he's writing, gosh, Grandpa, here's $50. If you could just go to a Fresno pawn shop, and here's a picture of a 1911 .45 automatic. We don't have money in the Marine Corps, gosh darn it, but they're great people. And would you please buy it, Grandma? And I promise to send you the money as soon as I get off Okinawa. If you could just send it to Guadalcanal. And then he's got all of these letters about how wonderful it is to fight for the Marine Corps. And he's killed. And I was thinking about that. I thought, wow, all those people, and that was just repeated thousands of times, millions of times in our history by people of every race, every background. And it's all coming to this? That's what it was all for the Grammy show, or what will be the halftime show in the Super Bowl. That's what it's all for. And then to add insult to injury, that this generation that can't stop with the most sophisticated computers in the world, two planes from almost hitting each other twice in 1 month, then they have the audacity to go back and blame these prior generations for doing what? Defeating the Kaiser or Hitler or Mussolini or Tojo or Brezhnev or Mao. It's really stunning how arrogant, incompetent, and bankrupt this generation is. It is.
Victor, as you're speaking about all this, I'm thinking back to this piece that you alluded to that Bill Maher put out earlier, or recently, but the message was, if you're involved in the revolution, you should look at history. And that's frankly I think one of your most powerful contributions to the discourse.
I think what he was trying to say is that the referent for the woke movement is not Lenin or Marx, it's Mao. Because while they believe in a class revolution, and they tried to change vocabulary and the whole, but not to the degree that Mao did. Mao killed 60, 70 million people, or was responsible. And that was a totality, 24/7, 360. So they went after people with eyeglasses. They went after people that had any foreign accent or had a degree, or they had red guards going out. They had dunce caps. It was sort of like this woke revolution that it's permeating every part. It's not just political. It's cultural, it's social, it's racial. And it's trying to change the way we think about our country. And that's what's scary, because, Orwell would always say, when he talked about East Asia and Oceania and the memory hole and all of this stuff, he always said, I think it's mentioned explicitly twice in the novel, where he says, we in the present who have control can control and alter the past to ensure the future. And what he's saying is, if you can go back and you've got control of the institutions, Harvard, the New York Times, and you can convince people that 1776 was not the founding of the country. It was 1619 when the first slave was landed by the British. And your revolution was not for what you think. It was to fight the British because they wanted to free slaves and you wanted to keep them. And you can make that false narrative, you can institutionalize it. Then in the future, you can justify everything from reparations to repertory admissions and hiring. And ultimately, it's always these revolutions from Mao or Stalin or Robespierre, they're always from the upper middle class. And it's the nomenclatura. And this thing is top down. When you look at Ta-Nehisi Coates or Professor Kendi or Van Jones, a recipient of a $100 million Bezos Award, lecturing people that the 5 African-American policemen were guided by white racism in a city that's 68% black against a victim, a poor innocent man who was beaten to death, who was African-American. As part of the Scorpion unit the police were, that came from appeals in the black inner city to a black police chief, a black assistant police chief, to deal with out of control black crime. And you're going to take that entire matrix, Van Jones is, and from his $100 million perch is going to say that's white racism, white lash, white this and that. Then you jump the shark. Nobody believes you anymore. And you can't, what's the use of arguing anymore if everything is racism? And then you couldn't go beyond that, but they can go beyond that, because then they said, I'm talking about they being the wokesters in the media, well, the fact that these people were so quickly charged with murder, Chauvin wasn't charged with murder as quickly as they were. It was racist because they were black. And the unit was racist that was black. The idea of having a special anti-crime unit to help the inner city helpless was racist. And that's where we're going. And